Hi everyone, we're your estate planning attorney Jeannie Zhang and Katie Thompson at Springdale Law Group. Today we want to talk about how to pass on the assets to your children. There's a couple of different ways, right?
Sure.
Which way is more protective and more safe, and you can protect your beneficiary from wasting this money.
And one thing to think about, we just use the term wasting the money. I don't think that you necessarily have to worry about protections for anyone that would directly waste. If you have a family member that maybe has an addiction or just isn't very money savvy, there are protections that you could use. But these are protections that you may also use in situations where you have a family member that is savvy, doesn't have any issues, but for instance, might be an attorney like the two of us, or perhaps a doctor. Any area where there may be a malpractice lawsuit that could be filed, there are protections that you want to use there as well. Additionally, if you have a family member that you think might undergo divorce for any reason, or if they might, for any reason, have to file for bankruptcy, there are additional protections that we would suggest that you use in those cases as well. So this isn't just something that you would use for someone that's unsophisticated or anything like that, but it's something that's generally a good protection to have, no matter if your child is savvy or not.
So do not leave money to your children outright. You always want to choose a way that you can pass on the assets to your children with a protection. So let's say if I gave the money to my children outright, what's going to happen?
Well, first and foremost, one of the things to think about is if you gave income to your children outright, there's taxation consequences that could be very negative for your children. So it comes out at that point as income, and it would be income that would come in that one taxable year. Or your children might lose a sizable chunk of that inheritance depending on what the amount is because of those taxation consequences. It's one of the reasons that we usually suggest a trust. But on top of that, suggesting the LAPT language. Now, what the LAPT language does is within the trust itself, it means that the person that is in control of the trust only gives money out for health, education, maintenance, and support. Now, when we create the trust, we're going to say that those terms should be executed broadly so that the person that's in charge of the trust is able to get requests from the person that's actually the beneficiary of the trust. And they're able to take those requests and benefit them broadly in those areas. However, one of the things that you can do is you can have situations where there would be the possibility of funding for things that would lie outside of those areas. So let's give an example. So let's say that you have a child that does have an addiction issue and they would like to take out money so that they can use it to purchase one of the products that they're addicted to. Technically, that would fall under health, but because giving money directly for a drug-related activity would be negative to that person's health, the person that's in control of the trust would not have to give out the money for that particular case. So it's a fail-safe that allows you to be able to protect that particular child of that addiction from their own addiction and keep them from being able to use the money for those types of needs. If you gave that money to that child outright, there's no protection there for that. So even if you put that money in an account that was bearing interest, there's nothing that keeps that child from drawing a large amount of money and using it in a way that would support that addiction. The other thing that you can do with a trust is you can put, in that particular case, you can put language that limits money coming out until they've gone to X amount of sessions for therapy or addiction specialty classes so that they can be well in control of themselves before they are able to actually touch the money.
And there might be another situation that you give asset to your children outright, and then if they get married too soon, right? If they get married at their 20s or 30s, we don't know if the first marriage is going to last forever, right? So let's say they got divorced, then the spouse have a chance to claim, half of the assets that you got from your parents, you use that in the marital assets, then you kind of mingle it, and then your spouse can get half of it. You don't want the spouse to claim half of your assets upon the divorce. So this might be another provision that we can put an extra protection to avoid the future divorce.
Correct. And now in Texas, if you're in a community property state, a lot of times inheritance is considered separate property. However, most normal people don't necessarily understand the rules for community property versus separate property. So if you got that amount of money and you put it in a joint bank account, so you put it in your joint savings together, it could become commingled, and that could allow that spouse to be able to have an undivided 1/2 interest in those funds. So it could incidentally cut that inheritance in half just because the people didn't know any better. So one of the things that you can do is by putting it in a trust, it's not possible for it to be commingled, and it gives that extra degree of protection so that if there is unfortunately a divorce that happens in the future, because we can't be sure if it's going to happen, then it goes ahead and protects those assets so that they're not divided as part of the divorce, and your child or your loved one is able to keep that full inheritance amount.
How to make sure not commingling the separate assets with the marital assets? I think that's another interesting topic. Maybe we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, I was like, I think we're going to do a video on that one in the future. But until then, just know that there's the possibility that you can commingle those funds and cause possible issues in the future.
How about lawsuit? Like if you get into a lawsuit, and then if I got $1 million from my parents, it's sitting in my bank, right? That's my money, right? And then if I have malpractice or I was driving and hit somebody and got sued, is there any protection right there?
So let's talk about that one. So as attorneys, we know a lot about lawsuits, right? But the normal person doesn't. So you don't necessarily think about those potentials. So first off, if you have a child that is in a professional field, so one like a doctor or an attorney where there's the potential for a malpractice lawsuit, you definitely want to give an inheritance with the LAPT protected language. And the reason that you want to do that is even if your child is the most ethical of all attorneys, even if they are the most perfect of all doctors, it's possible that a malpractice claim will be filed. And if there were to be a malpractice judgment, the LAPT language protects all of that inheritance from any possible judgment that would come from a malpractice suit. So I highly, highly, highly recommend, and my parents are doing this with anything with me, that you go ahead and put on that LAPT language. Not because I think I'm a bad attorney, because I'm not, but we never know what's going to happen in the future.
And the same as the lawsuit, right?
Correct.
The creditors.
Correct.
If you own someone's money or you got into a car accident, someone else sued you.
Yes, and so that's another thing. So we also don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's possible that under a weird twist of circumstances, there's a judgment that comes against you for whatever reason, whether you were in a car accident that you didn't mean to do something, and it happens that there's a large judgment that's adjudicated against you. The LAPT language again would protect. What that does is it actually separates that property from you. You don't actually own the assets themselves until that payment is made out of the trust. And because a lawsuit or judgment does not fall under health, education, maintenance, or support, it's protected from there being a payout from that to be able to satisfy that judgment. So especially if you live in Texas or another state that has these types of protections, it's very important that you go ahead and try to put them on. And again, just because we don't know what's going to happen.
And the same as a bankruptcy, right? So if you have a business and then it's not going well and you file bankruptcy, and those creditors, they can go after you to reach out the inheritance.
Correct. So one of the things that can happen, we're kind of in an era where everybody and their dog has a business, right? We're doing videos, in addition to being attorneys, we're doing videos and content on YouTube. People do all this kind of stuff all the time. And so you'll have a side business, your side business will have a side business, and all that. Well, sometimes those don't turn out well. And that's okay, but you want to make sure that any inheritance that you have is protected from anything that would happen if you did have to unfortunately file for bankruptcy. So by putting on that LAPT language, again, it protects because it's not a health, education, maintenance, or support need, and would not do a payout that would pay off for creditors.
Yeah, so we highly recommend that when you establish trust, you choose the one with the protection. So the trust that we established for most of our clients comes with this protection. And this protection can protect your beneficiary who are not very finance savvy, or they might be addicted to drugs. and then it can protect them from future divorce or lawsuits, creditors, and also bankruptcy. With just one protection, we can cover all the situation and make sure that you pass on your money to your beneficiaries with protection, and it's very safe there. It will be there when they actually need to use it, right? So they can't just waste it or somehow get into a lawsuit and then other people can get all the money from you.
Correct. And again, it's not necessary that you're thinking that whoever it is that's going to be your beneficiary is not financially sophisticated. They may be highly sophisticated. But you want to go ahead and have those protections just in case there's unforeseen issues in the future.
Situations.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And again, if you have anyone that's a child that's a professional, I would highly, highly, highly suggest just to go ahead and put the language in there, because it's going to protect them if there is the potential for that moment.
Right. Yes. If you guys have any questions about the trust with special protection, you can reach out to us.
We're more than happy to schedule a consultation with you and actually discuss this issue in person, so that we can teach you more that there is to know about LAPT language.
Great. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.